Welcome back to the Bandwidth Tapes. I'm Brad Williams. Today's guest is Taylor Eigsti, and this is one of those conversations that reminded me why I love doing this show. Taylor's someone who thinks deeply about music, not just how to play it, but how to build space for it to happen in real time. We talk about writing music that's precise without being over-controlled, the balance between preparation and spontaneity, and what it's like stepping into high-level musical situations where trust is the real currency. Taylor shares some insights from his recent gigs with Michael League, opens up about his Grammy-winning records Tree Falls and Plot Armor, and talks honestly about what that recognition does and doesn't change. We also get into composing as a daily practice, collaboration, tour life, teaching, and even a little football along the way. This is a thoughtful, wide-ranging conversation with someone who's constantly asking the right questions of the music. Here's my conversation with Taylor Eigsti. Taylor, it's an honor to welcome you to the podcast. How's it going today?
It's going great. Thanks so much, Brad. Good to be talking to you.
Yeah, I've been so looking forward to this. I'm such a fan of you as a composer, as a performer, as a recording artist, just all the things that you do. I'm just such a fan of yours, and I'm so honored to get to chat with you today.
Well, thanks so much. I saw that recently you had very close friend of mine on, Becca Stevens.
Yes.
She's so great. We've worked together for decades, and still play together. Recently it's been a little bit more often again too, which is great. So
that's wonderful. I just had such a good time talking with her, and as you know, she's an unbelievable human being, right? And then just the talent that oozes from her, it's quite amazing. I imagine that it's been a beautiful collaboration for you to get to work with her over the years.
Absolutely. She's one of my all-time favorite people, period, and then people to play with and travel with and all of that. So I feel lucky to know her, and a lot more to come. So yeah.
That's exciting. That's good to hear. As we're recording this, I think I saw various locations on the internet. You played a series of shows, I think, with Michael League at the Blue Note. Is that right?
Yeah, that was last week. We did a run there that was with Kendrick Scott and Antonio Sánchez on 2 drums, and Max ZT on hammered dulcimer, who's just incredible. He's a really unique musician, and John Ellis also on saxophone and bass clarinet. But yeah, that was a special little run. Mike's music is great. He wrote. Mike took over the Blue Note for the month of January in like kind of a extended residency, and every couple of nights or every week, it was different stuff throughout the whole month, different collaborations and all that. And he wrote new music for each specific grouping and combination, which is it's pretty prolific. It's a crazy amount of work for him to write all that, but it was fun. All of the music was really written for each of those ensembles specifically, so it really brought out a lot of cool things in in the way that those combinations worked. So yeah, and everything except for his very last night, I guess, was canceled because of the snowstorm, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah.
But he made it through the rest of the month, and yeah, he's legendary. He's great.
I'm just trying to work out the logistics in my head of having time to rehearse with the group and how all of that works. I mean, was it like sound check? We're going to play through these charts and away we go.
Yep, that was that was it. Yeah, we just had kind of an early sound check and ran through the stuff, and those are my favorite situations, anyways, where with no insult towards those who like to call a bunch of rehearsals, it's sometimes, I mean, there's a line too. There's if you write a certain amount of music that's like all a bunch of 15 pagers and things like that, you probably want to have a separate rehearsal. But what I loved about this the most is he just he knows us as musicians, wrote the music specifically for us, and then just kind of trusted that we would check it out and come prepared and that sort of thing, which I think is all the time I'm really fortunate that I've had a lot of situations throughout my life that have made me a very prepared guy. Like if someone sends me, I'm not a great reader too, so I have to mark things up in my own way and all that. A lot of colored pens, and anyone who ever plays with me, they would they all know that I'm kind of a nut about that. But it's for me it's a satisfying thing. I'm very grateful to have variety in the people that I get to play with. But then also that people keep throwing some hard ass music at me, because I come out of all those situations being a better musician because of it. So I, like this last couple of days with Ben Wendel, we were playing in Brooklyn the last 2 nights, and Ben, he wrote some incredible music that when Michael Brecker passed away, he had like a handful of songs that he'd been working on that were really challenging music. He was getting into Bulgarian folk music, and he didn't get a chance to finish them. And so Brecker's family, Susan Brecker and Randy Brecker, they went to Ben Wendel and they asked him if he would finish these tunes basically and compose the rest of them. So we were basically premiering new Michael Brecker music, which was really special.
Wow.
But it was it was a lot of reading, a lot of stuff to learn, and great band: Nate Wood, Gilad Hexelman, Harish Raghavan, and Jason Lidner on keyboards, and myself on piano. But that was a situation where we did have a rehearsal day, because it was that was a hefty load of tunes. But there'd be like a really long, complicated specific passage that my left hand has to play, and things like that. Like by working on that, I feel like that just keeps me in musical shape. The opportunity to be in these situations and have to learn a bunch of hard stuff, and which it's no longer hard once you just get used to it. So I don't believe in the concept of hard or easy music. It's all just relative to, are you used to it or not? Because the music itself, that doesn't change. So, actually John Clayton, when I was growing up and going to USC, I remember John Clayton said that there's no such thing as hard music. So I've tried to apply that to, everything conceptually in the sense of, just have to get used to something, and then it's, then it feels easy.
That's right. No, that's a wonderful way to look at it. And I'm thinking about you talking about this concept of over rehearsing or under rehearsing. I've been in many musical situations like that where I love those opportunities where it's solid enough with the ensemble, but there's still room for the magic to happen, where it's not just completely rehearsed to death. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the fine line that I think a lot of my favorite composers, and certainly the last week of shows with Michael Eag and Ben Wendel, they're some of my very favorite, where there is a lot of precision oriented, the music comes together if everything is played correctly, but then they both are really, really great at leaving in enough spaces where it can expand in the present moment, and enough spaces where it's really important to me that everything is different every time, to whatever degree. And so the spaces of allowing for that, is a real compositional technique in a way, to be able to straddle the line between writing some stuff that is really, sounds good on ink, but then, in the present moment can expand and all of that. But I think also it takes the mentality of, calling specific people for them, and those are the situations I like to be involved in. That's how I like to be as a band leader too, where, calling someone specific for the gig because you know how they play and what they would bring to something, as opposed to my least favorite gigs sometimes are, there's some used to be kind of a big thing in LA where singers would just, they'd have like their book of arrangements and stuff. And then it's like, you just go play the arrangement. You might as well just call a classical musician at that point. Because if you just want to hear the ink, get someone that's what they do. They play ink, or as my friend Harish calls those people, CC Placey, where see a C, play a C, and but my favorite situations, it's like when everyone is you feel that you're there because everyone's in a there for who they are as an individual. With Gretchen Parlato over the years, one psychological tactic that intentional or not that she does that makes everyone feel like they're there for a reason, they're there because of who they are, is that her charts are, they're like one pagers and things like that. So she really trusts people to, bring themselves into the music, as opposed to relying on a 15-page arrangement where every little thing is written out. And, I feel really lucky to be around people that have that mentality, allow people to be individuals, but then also, I like it that there's some challenging things involved, some things to get used to. So I would get really bored and dark if I didn't have variety in my life. So
Sure.
I'm thankful.
Yeah. It's almost like, casting for a film. You wouldn't cast the same actors, players over and over again. It's the same kind of thing. You bring the strengths or the ability level or the vibe of this rhythm section or however you want to, classify it. I think of it as almost casting an ensemble for a musical event.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you're writing a script for a movie and it can never be fully just the dialogue telling the story, as good as it can be. There's so much, and I was reminded of this with a movie that I just saw 2 nights ago. It's nominated for an Oscar. It's called One Battle After Another. It has Leonardo,
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yep. And the thing about that I noticed really in that movie was Sean Penn, the scenes he's in, the dialogue, if you just gave that dialogue to anyone, it wouldn't work. It was a pretty simple dialogue, to be honest, but there's so much of the story that he tells in his facial reactions and what's going on in his overall presence and stuff. And I think musically the parallels are pretty strong there of people have, especially when you're dealing with music that has improvised elements in it, whether it's jazz or branches of that. I think what really tells the story is then the people themselves, like the way that they're telling that, as opposed to, but the ink is the structure that guides it all. It's the landscape that lets it happen and stuff. So, that's important too. But again, it's always that fine line to kind of find the sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your composition workflow? I know you're such a prolific composer for jazz, but also classical music. Like you write everything. And do you have a schedule? Do you write like a songwriter? Some songwriters will sit and write every day, no matter what. Do you do that, or do you wait for inspiration? Do you write for a project?
Well, I'm a big believer. My rule is that 19 out of 20 things that we write are garbage. So, we're lucky as human beings to get 5% good ones. And, but the only way of doing that is quantity. So for me, while I don't have a specific structured every single day writing assignment, although I tell that to my students sometimes, it's a great thing to do. It takes the pressure off too, because that, if you have a timed composition every day, like a 35-minute timer, I think Fred Hirsch, great piano player, he does that. But it takes the pressure off because that it probably won't be good. So you don't have to, beat yourself up over it or whatever. It's the idea is to be using that muscle, the compositional muscle, every day, because composition is something like playing and improvising that you have to practice. So if you don't practice composing, then and you don't compose for a long time, and then all of a sudden you compose and it's not great, you can freak out and you can think, well, why am I? But the truth is, you're just rusty. And people don't think of composing sometimes like that. They don't realize that it's something that definitely benefits from frequent, doing it frequently. And there's always, a number of different projects that I'm kind of juggling at a given time. I'm in the slow process of making the next album, and so compositionally, I'm still in the writing phase with that, and it's a hard thing to balance. Like, when it'd be great to have inspiration all the time, and when I do get a idea that I think is like, I'm kind of excited about it, I do try to drop everything and just go race over and try to write something down or record it, because I think Steven David Lynch, the great filmmaker, he was saying, like, if you have an idea that pops into your head, and it's a bad idea, you don't really bother to write it down. It's just going to fade out of your mind. But he's like, sometimes we forget to write down the good ideas that come, and because we think, well, it's such a great idea that obviously I'll remember that later. But he's like, we forget those just as much as the bad ideas. So the importance of writing something down when you do, encounter the muse, which is like really fleeting most of the time. And so I do actively try to document ideas when they happen, when I think they're good ideas. But that being said, I mean, there's just so much, I'm kind of trying to look at the flow of when I'm going to have all these tunes ready to make this next album, similar to maybe the last couple albums in terms of how that workflow worked. But then there's some collaborations with a few artists that I'm working on right now. Like, there's some music I'm writing with Corey Wong, who's a great guitarist, and so we're sending each other back and forth some ideas and all that. And then Alina Engabarian, who's just an incredible singer and songwriter and all that. And she just sent me some new things that she's working on that she wants to record. And yeah, there's always a lot of different things at once, which is great. But it does keep me writing pretty frequently. But occasionally it's not every day. I wish it was every day. It should be every day. But there's even if I sometimes at the end of a long day, if I can come down into the studio here and just get something out in 20-30 minutes or something, even if it's a dumb idea, I consider it a success if I come down here when I'm really tired at the end of a long day and have an hour recorded on Logic of some ideas that I'm working on that are terrible. To me, I consider that a success, because I'm that much closer to the night when the good ideas will happen. So
yeah,
you got to get the crap out to get to the good stuff. So
yeah. As a classical music listener, and maybe as a composer, who were some of those inspirations to you as a fan of that music?
Sure. I mean, to me, there's different influences I've had over time have just constantly changed. So, especially compositionally. So there was periods of time in my life where I was very, very much heavily inspired by the most, I would feel the most inspired when I would listen to like Bjork's music with orchestra and things, and some of those incredible arrangements that are on like Vespertine and Homogenic things like that. And just some, so that became a massive influence. And actually there was one video of Bjork that I always loved, that for whatever reason, and I think it's still available on YouTube somewhere, but it's her playing Hyper Ballad on the Jules Holland show. There's this guy with crazy hair, and he's just playing with brushes on the snare drum. And but that one little single video really stayed with me. And so that became like a massive, I don't know, just vein of the music that I found really inspiring. But certainly, yeah, I mean, I get inspiration from everything, like from a really amazing Eminem track where his rhyme scheme is like in 5/8 inside like larger fours and things like that, or or Bulgarian music, Bulgarian folk music. Speaking of, the stuff that we were just doing of Michael Brecker's, and a lot of that is just some of the best music ever, I think. Bulgarian women's choirs, they're all just such total badasses and singing semitones, quarter tones, things like that generate emotions that are harder to define in tempered tuning, harder to access. When I listen to Bulgarian women's choirs, I'm like, man, why am I like crying? But I don't understand what emotion this is. It's like alien emotions or something.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of that, certainly some of the greatest, jazz composers over time, always listen to songwriters. A guy who I got to know briefly in Sweden, he has an incredible group. Actually, they just released a new album. His band is called Lonely Deer. And that is just unbelievable music. Really, really incredible tunes. He's a very unique singer with a raw sound that's just like, it's deeply emotional. Certainly love a lot of that. My wife is a cellist and recently was playing some Rachmaninoff with her. So going back and revisiting a lot of great Rachmaninoff, pieces and looking at the structure of them and all of that. But then, in the jazz world, some of my favorite composers are Jeffrey Keyser, great piano player.
Yeah.
And his arranging has always been amazing. I grew up loving and kind of idolizing when I was a kid, David Benoit, and the structure of his tunes, which are kind of more pop-based jazz and stuff that's just really fun and interesting, and sonically there's some powerful consonants in a lot of places, which is what I'm a little bit more drawn to than constant dissonance and things like that. The New York Times once referred to me as a pianist of modernity and streamlined consonants. So I was like, wow, that's, for whatever reason, it stuck with me, where I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, okay, it feels like some weird masked insult, but I'm like, yeah, who doesn't like, okay, so I'm the major chord guy, but yeah, who doesn't love like a nice juicy D major or something? So, but so yeah, I've had a lot of different influences over time, and that's not to say too that I don't love things that are dissonant or chaotic or all sorts of stuff, because a lot of that can be really cinematic and tell an amazing story. But I think we're all kind of a combination of our influences, and they come out at different times. For me, it's never usually really on the nose, and it's hard for me to listen to someone else's music and then immediately go compose, because I listen too hard to that. And then I'm too influenced by something, so I've let myself go through phases all through my life of like, when I was a teenager, it would be like, okay, I'd only listen to Oscar Peterson for 1 month. And then after that, then I would only listen to Brad Meldau for 1 month. And then I would only listen to, but I think going through phases is cool. It can be a healthy thing, because you really steep yourself in someone's music, learn a lot about their, process as to how they put together their own sound and all of that kind of stuff. But then you want to keep it moving, and keep moving on to different influences and stuff. And there's some artists that I just can't listen to on a real casual level. Like I can't, just casually pop on. Bjork's a great example of that. Like I can't really just go and put her in a playlist with other tunes. It doesn't really work. I have to have a Bjork week or Bjork weekend or something to listen to that.
when you were talking about David Benoit earlier, it reminded me of, I read a funny story about, I think you asked your dad when you were a kid about how much does he have to pay to play. That
Yeah.
is one of the cutest and funniest stories I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, that's when I decided to be a musician. He told me, "Oh, he gets paid to do that." And now in my 40s, it's like, oh, a lot of times you're still paying to
Still
make a
doing
gig
it.
come
Yeah.
together. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, David was a big influence growing up. He was, he was someone that like I would listen to his music when I was 6 and 7. I kind of like learned a lot of his tunes and got a chance to open for him when I was 8 years old. But I remember when I was 7, I watched him on stage. I think it was at a place called the Circle Star Theater in the Bay Area, and that no longer exists. But I just remembered I had never seen someone like, he's up there in the middle of this whole theater in the round thing, and he's just like, there's so much energy, and he was having so much fun, and I wanted to do that so bad. I just wanted to, feel like that. And luckily over the years, like David really has been, he's like family. So really, really fortunate that we've gotten to make quite a bit of music over the years, and he's just been very he's been cool to me since the very beginning. So
Oh, that's amazing.
lucky to have heroes that are very safe to meet, and
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah, I've learned in my life, and that statement of don't ever meet your heroes, it's not really, in my experience, is not really true.
Yeah, I'd say it's always true to like meet them, because if you find something out that's not great too, get that information,
Yeah.
and maybe there's someone that doesn't, maybe they don't deserve all that time and energy sent towards trying to emulate them when you find out certain things. But I'm lucky that the folks that I grew up like really idolizing just turned out to be great people and all that.
What do you remember emotionally about those early years that you were playing piano? Was it just immediate, like, yes, this is it, this is my path, this is the direction of my life? You knew it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there's anytime I had like, some of those kind of like moments on stage that are really special, that just kind of where you just like, just loaded with dopamine and, serotonin's running through your veins. Like it just, that rush of playing music that feels really good and in front of a enthusiastic audience that's, giving the energy back to you and all those kind of things. And so I think every musician, who performs, that's the dragon you're always chasing. And sometimes you get that dragon, and those are the really good gigs and all of that. And so, emotionally, it was something that it helped give me an identity when I was a lot younger. I mean, growing up, I was labeled a prodigy a lot in articles and stuff like that. But I don't consider myself like a real prodigy. I mean, on YouTube, if you look up little like 6-month-year-olds somewhere in Asia or something that are just like burning over some tune, I'm like, that wasn't me. I definitely wasn't. I was just a young kid that was out performing, and so people naturally then they're like, oh, prodigy. And so but I think it was a good thing in that I had a lot of people around me telling me I was good at something, which is good for any kid to hear at that age, because I'm really fortunate that I'm doing what I love to do. I'm fortunate that I just knew what I wanted to do, period. Because there's a lot of, I have plenty of friends my age. They're still sometimes, searching for that and searching for the thing that makes them the happiest and stuff. And, but I'm happy that it gave me a sense of when I was a kid, because of those things, it gave me a sense of identity and like, well, this is what I'm going to do. And, didn't really, the only other thing I would have done would be coach football. So that's the other love of my life is football, and would have been involved in it. Had it, probably not as a player, although I was a good quarterback and wide receiver, but,
that's awesome. Yeah.
That's always been a huge part of my life, an obsession. And in a parallel universe, I'm at least an offensive coordinator somewhere. But it was gave me something to latch on to, where I'm like, yeah, this is the thing that I do, which is cool.
Yeah. I'm assuming you're a Niners fan.
Oh, very much so. It was
Yeah.
mixed emotions this year because we weren't even supposed to be in there at all, and proud of them for fighting, for going into Philly and getting a wild card win. But it was that was pretty sad. I had a gig during the divisional playoff game against the Seahawks, and I'm kind of happy that I didn't have to watch the second half. I watched the first half and then went out on stage, and if it's regular season, I'll stream the game on my phone on a gig. I've done it on my own gigs, on other people with symphonies. It doesn't matter. I'm not missing.
I'm a Braves fan. I'm a big baseball fan, and I've done that too. I get it.
Yeah.
I understand.
Absolutely. I mean, it's but for me, regular season, I can do it. Playoffs, I can't have that in the piano because I'll throw up. I'll get real. I take it too seriously. So and the other day I was doing a gig at it was SF Jazz, really nice big hall there. And with a quartet that was really special. Oscar Seaton on drums, Jonathan Marin on bass, and Charles Altura on guitar. And I was just so thankful to be playing with them. I hadn't played with Charles and Oscar in a long time, in probably well over a year. So it just felt really good, and it gave me an escape, actually, of it kind of saved me where I wasn't thinking about that playoff game. And, but that's what I'm saying about like that, that moment of like the dragon that we're always chasing is like it, man. I feel, restored by playing with, especially because I get to play with people at the very, highest end of the art form. Like these are some of the best musicians in the world, and so I feel lucky to do that and to honor them. I just being in the present moment and leaving my phone backstage. It's now, but again, in regular season, I will honor them and be streaming the game. So
I know so many music, and I'm sure you've encountered this too. That I remember being on a gig one time, and I hadn't played with these musicians very much, and brought up something about sports, and they looked at me like I had something growing out of the top of my head. So many musicians that I'm sure you've worked with, they don't know anything about it, and they don't have any desire to know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. I mean, anyone who's around me, it's for longer than 2 minutes, you're going to hear something 49ers related. So it's all of the people that I work with, they at least have, at the very bare minimum, they have an acceptance and a tolerance of all of that, even if they don't closely follow it and stuff. But then I'm in a lot of different bands where there's people who all are fans and watch, and I'm in very few bands with other Niner fans, people who, I remember when I was in Chris Bodie's band or Terrence Blanchard's band, like everyone had a different NFL team that they rooted for. So it was, a lot of lively debates and all that and stuff, which makes it extra fun on the road. So I've actually had a pretty big percentage of groups that I play with where people are pretty into it. But then there's some who don't really care, and I love them too, but they they'll never shut it down in a way. And now my wife, she had never seen any football before me, and she's into it now. I took her to a game, and she got the fan bug, and she's got like 3 or 4 jackets, and she's always walking around in Niner stuff, and I'm like,
that's awesome.
I love that. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. I think when people are exposed to it in the right way, and certainly going to a game, and when you're surrounded by that energy, and I mean, baseball is the same way, basketball, it's just more, you feel the energy of when you're actually there in person, and for her too, like I walk around in Niner stuff every day, and then when she saw 70,000 people walking around in the same thing, she's like, oh my God, there's like 70,000 U's, so it's makes more sense then at that point. Yeah.
I'm 49, I'll be 50 and later this year, and so I grew up I'm a child of the 80s, and I'm so thankful that I was able to witness the Joe Montana, Jerry Rice years of the 49ers.
Absolutely.
It was something to behold.
Yeah, I mean, that was an amazing time. I mean, I really kind of, my favorite generation of all that was the Steve Young generation. That was kind of when I became a deep fan, although, still was a fan of all the Joe Montana thing. I just was kind of on the young side when a lot of that stuff was happening. I was 84, so but there was still, and my sister, who passed away when I was 3, she was 17, and Joe Montana visited her in the hospital,
Really?
and so I've always had a lot of love and respect for Joe Montana, and throughout the years met him a number of times and got to hang out with him one day. He was running around signing a bunch of stuff, and his agent had me come and just kind of hang there all day. And
That's awesome.
yeah, Joe's he's got some of my albums and all that. But I mean, I'm pretty much I've tried to structure my whole career to just put me in advantageous 49ers positions. So there's, I'm friends with a couple different former players, and just had a chance to when I had the privilege of winning a couple Grammys, the both times I wore 49ers socks, and I made sure to get official portraits with the holding up the Niners logo, and then sent that to the owner of the team, and got a chance to hang and celebrate and all that. So yeah, I'm pretty much, music can be a great thing. If you want to have more 49ers perks, music is a great career to really help set it up.
Listen, I think 5 times I've sung the national anthem at Atlanta Braves games over the years, and it was 100% an excuse to get to go for batting practice and sound check and be on the field, and that's all it was about for me, was just to go be around the players. And I'll sing for 90 seconds if I can go and do that.
Right,
I get it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
that can be very exciting. That's on my bucket list too. I haven't really gotten a chance to, but I want to play the national anthem at a NFL game. So I'm sure, hopefully it'll happen before too long. But that's something that although a friend of mine, James Francis, great piano player, he did it at New York Giants, solo piano, and I think it was for Giants Cowboys or something like that, and he said that the delay was brutal, like hearing the audio back through the stadium speakers, a good half second or more.
I would always wear earplugs when I would do it,
right?
Just not anything that's going to deaden the sound too much, but just enough to knock that, because you start.
Yeah,
it can start slowing down, and it can really start to mess with your noggin when you're doing it. Yeah,
definitely.
You mentioned Grammys earlier. I was wanting to, as we're recording this is Grammy weekend, and talking about those 2 albums, the 2 albums in a row, right, that you released that won those awards. Every time I mention that to someone, they're like, "What the hell? Are you serious?" Yeah, it's like an incredible award.
Oh, man. Thanks, man.
What did that recognition mean to you, if anything? I mean, do you hang your hat on a lot of that stuff? Does it? I mean, it has to mean. The validation has to mean something, but
I mean, it's a really cool honor for sure. Definitely didn't do the albums to like for that as a goal,
sure.
But it does help in terms of theoretically it helps on when you're booking gigs and things like that. But there's so many albums and musicians that should have won Grammys over the years and all that kind of stuff. And so how it shakes out doesn't really matter that much, I think. But it's a cool honor, and I appreciated the opportunity to experience that. It was really, really, really cool. It doesn't do as much stuff for your career in a way that you might think, like someone wins an Oscar or something, and then like, oh, their life's got to be totally different and stuff. And for me, it's just, it's not really, I play a kind of music, my own music, kind of the music on these last couple of records and stuff that I'm doing is not very referential. So it doesn't sound like jazz standard stuff. It doesn't sound like a tribute to Oscar Peterson. It doesn't sound like any of those things. And that's harder for venues and places to really know how to market or know what they're into. And so the machine doesn't really get behind that type of music as much when you're doing something that is a little bit more genre blending and harder to define. It's just not, there's not a natural touring circuit sometimes. So it didn't help from the concept of like, being able to do more touring with my own group. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not that much. You'd be surprised by how much it doesn't really affect anything, because it's, the type of music I play. It's I think people's entry point to when they enjoy certain music is if they can compare it to something, and this stuff, like it or not, it does have its own sound to it, and I think that can be something that some places don't necessarily know how to, it's with, you take comparison out of something, and then it's really hard to know how to market something or know how to all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to keep doing it because I like the music, and and there's a lot of people that I've too many people that I've seen over the years that just really love that music. So I want to keep making that whatever that weird little sweet spot is that's kind of like my style of music, but yeah, the Grammy thing is like it's very cool to have had that experience, especially this last one, because I got to experience it with my now wife, and that was really special. And it's it's a reflection of like, took us 71 days to make that last album, Plot Armor, and then I think Tree Falls was something like 45 days in the studio. So it just it was a lot of long hours, myself and Josh Giunta, my co-producer and engineer, and it's like to get something like that at the end of it is like nice. It's a nice little reward for a lot of just sitting in a room smelling each other's farts till 3 a.m. like editing the same passage of something, and then it's like, all right, well, now we get to go get dressed up and do this cool thing. So and it's nice when there was 20 plus people involved in making that record too, so musicians and everyone else involved in that process. So it's a reflection on them and their hard work and all that. So it's nice to be able to do that for them as a collective, kind of, in a way. But,
yeah. That album, I will tell you, I had not been that excited about listening to an album, and I couldn't tell you when I heard it, I could not stop listening to it. And and all this time later, I'm still there. It just checks so many boxes for me. And
thanks, man.
It's so good, from compositionally to just it's like one of the best drum sounds I've heard. The drum sounds so good. Just, everything about it.
Well, Josh Giunta, my co-producer and engineer, he's also a drummer and stuff. So I know that was one of the things that he had a real a lot of detail work with that, because he knows how to get a really great sound. He's also just like so patient, and for something like we had the great luxury of being able to take that much time for the last two records, and so could get into that kind of detail work with when you have time, and had a real rare situation where we could kind of go into the studio whenever we would want to, and I'm thankful for that, because that's hard situation to find. So
absolutely. Where did you record those albums?
Well, they both were at least partially recorded at what is now called Second Take Sound in New York. It used to be GSI Studios, and GSI had a record label. That's what I released Tree Falls on. But then they became Second Take Sound, and Josh was still the head engineer there, and so we could kind of come in anytime we wanted for Plot Armor and work on that there. But then we also recorded at East West Studios in LA. So a lot of things on Plot Armor, I would say a third of them at least were at East West, in a really amazing room there, the same room that Sinatra recorded all of his classic recordings. And I used 4 different pianos on the record. There's Sinatra's personal piano that they have there at East West, which is an amazing piano. But I mean, I'm a Yamaha artist and used a lot of Yamahas on this, including at Second Take Sound, the Yamaha that they had there before they got a Steinway in there now. But I used Frank's piano on some of that, and then there was a Bosendorfer on a handful of tracks, and then there was a secondary Yamaha that was a bit brighter that I used. So I think different pianos can bring out different things. So if there's a song with like, a real intense like doubled piano bass line or something like that, like rather than tweaking with it in a way, like I'd rather just record that part on a different piano that would have like, you know, a punchiness to that. Or if I need something that's more mellow and soft, like on some of the vocal tunes and things, like there was one with Gretchen Parlato and strings and all that. And so I went with the mellower piano for that tune, you know, to try to bring out a different quality. One of my favorite engineers to ever work with was Al Schmidt. He was he was legendary, and yeah, I mean, Grammy wise, that guy, he had like 13 Grammys, 12, 14, something crazy. He just was all sorts of you know, real epic recordings of everyone in pop music and jazz and all sorts of stuff. But Al Schmidt, you know, there's not too many more people that are kind of even remotely like that anymore. What he used to do when he would be recording in the studio, I would, you know, if I'm like, you know, can you bring up the high mids and the piano or something like that? And most producers will, you know, they'll just tweak with a plug-in or, you know, tweak it in the studio with something digital. But he would come out and move the mic like half a centimeter, you know, and things like that. So James Farber is still kind of like that at Sears Sound in New York. He's the only other person I can think of that still is like the old school, like just make sure the mic's set up in the exact right position, and it makes a world of difference. You don't have to use all these plugins, but yeah. But I'm trying to think of how I was drawing a metaphor, a parallel to Al Schmidt, but I can't remember what I was saying right before.
That's all right. It's incredible. Yeah. And it's interesting to hear that you use such a variety of instruments, you know, and rather than, I like that idea of rather than play with EQ or play with plugins to.
That's why I was telling the Al Schmidt story. That's the tie-in right there. It was just, you know, sometimes it's better when you just use a different instrument for different things. So, you know.
Yeah, I would imagine it also brings out probably has a different creative spark for you in the moment, playing that on a different instrument instead of maybe playing the same thing,
entirely.
playing everything on this. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it brings out a different personality, different side of yourself, different everything. I mean, I don't play any guitars, but I know how much guitarists really care about the different guitars they're playing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about that. You know, a guitarist may bring 30 different instruments to a session, you know, because they don't know what they're going to need.
A young rock looks up at her mother. Look around you, she said. 1,000 like-minded cool bits of lava rest where the journey of fire has led. Believe in the little things around you. Endless possibilities surround you. Believe in it, just look around you. Believe in it, just look around you. Believe in it, just look around you. Believe in it, let me remind you.
We talked about Becca early on. I was curious how you two met and started working with each other, and just how that. I'm curious about the collaborative relationship and that give and take of how that relationship has worked.
Yeah, I reached out to Becca in I think 2006 maybe on MySpace, and I wrote her a MySpace message and said, "Hey, I'm Taylor. You know, I'm a musician. I really like your music and stuff." And had some ideas that, you know, might sound really good with you, and would love to, I don't know, maybe, you know, collaborate on some stuff. And she got back to me, and then we became friends, and we had a pretty legendary hang between her and Gretchen Parlato, where she had never met Gretchen before, and Gretchen had never really met Becca. So the three of us got to know each other, and then just kind of from that point started working in every combination and all that. And but sometimes just personalities really hit it off. And musically, it's you can't force anything. It's just like there's some collaborations that are like, they're nice, you can make it kind of work, but then it's not going to stick, and you aren't going to be dying to. I mean, Becca's one of those people that I'll be playing with her till I die. Gretchen Parlato too, where 20 years later we're still playing together, and there's people now where I was just on a gig the other day with I was a really special couple gigs I did. There were some trio gigs 2 weeks ago at a place called Libretto in California. One of my favorite. I love this club. It's in Paso Robles, and just an amazing environment. And you could basically just play acoustic there. And I had Jason Lewis, drummer from the Bay Area, come down, and it's kind of equidistant between LA and the Bay Area, so you can kind of come up or come down from either place. Had Alan Hampton come from LA, and Jason I've been playing with for over 30 years, which is really crazy. But Alan I had been playing with for probably 20 years. And so, but I had never played with both of them together ever. So that was a wild sensation because I just know both of them so well and know them musically so well. And then to kind of collide worlds like that I want to do that kind of thing more often, just pick people from different, eras or performing groups in a way in my mind, and combine more people like that, because I always love when that happens. When it's like when we had our wedding in October, but it's just so crazy how at a wedding it's like everyone there. If you're the one getting married, like it's like doing a random scroll on your phone book on your phone and just being like, okay, now you hang out with you, and you hang people that them, but they don't know each other yet. And it's such a cool thing. But
I've had experiences like that, to work with musicians that I knew both of them and they didn't know each other, and it's so exciting to watch them develop a musical kinship with each other. While you're performing together. This is wonderful.
And if you can be like I felt like being a musical matchmaker is a pretty cool sensation. I mean, especially when I think to that like Becca Stevens and Gretchen Parlato thing. It's like that was a pretty crazy coffee that we all grabbed, because it was like what led from that was years of playing together and all sorts of stuff and adventures and tours and all sorts of things, but when people, it's never forced, but then when people really hit it off musically, it's a special thing to witness or be a part of the start of.
When you're collaborating with people, with artists that that have their strong artistic voice, how do you know when to lead or to get out of the way, or kind of work together with them? Is it just instinct, or is it depend on who you're working with, I suppose?
Probably more maybe a combination, I guess. But because the more I know someone personally, the easier it is to work with them musically, just because it's like comping or accompanying, collaborating is very, it's social. So to know the ebb and flow of like a social conversation between someone that really well and all that, I think is then it makes it easy to play music with them, because there's something about them that you already know. You can start to predict, a little bit of their thought process, their pacing, the rhythm of how they breathe, some of that. And then that automatically puts you ahead of the game musically, just knowing the person and stuff. If you go into a situation where you know nothing about them personally and just sit down and you're just thrown together, make music, you can do it, but you're learning about them right then and there, and that's possible too. There's a high ceiling for that, but it's just knowing someone is making music with someone you really know is just you can get so deep, because it's just more intuitive, and all of your intuition and instinct comes out more then, I think, because it's the same way you could have like, there's some people you could talk with for like 5 hours, and then there's some other people where it's like, man, 5 minutes is like pulling teeth. So, I've been lucky that the people that I play with are just, these are some of my favorite people. So, in fact, I think I pretty much kind of unintentionally instated a policy in my life of just, the only people in my band or that I like working with, I have to like them as people too. And so I'm not opposed to working with anyone new, but they at least have to be really nice or that sort of a thing. Cause I just, there's just no room for dealing with idiots. And especially if you're on the road with people, you got to be able to be with people who can get along with each other and be responsible and go out and kind of die for it every night, really care about the present moment when you're performing. And there's always, no matter how ludicrous it is, the concept of anytime you sit down to play music, it could be the last time, it could be your last opportunity. So if that's a small gig, if that's a big gig, if it's whatever the circumstance is, there's school bus could bust through the wall and run you over, so I like playing with musicians that share that mentality of we could be joking around and things like that, like to the very last second and stuff, and then when we're on stage and we're in the middle of the tunes, it's just that other people with me, like where they share that mentality where that just becomes their world, and I love being able to have that, because that's that fun trance. I mean, it's the fun 1 out of 24 that you get to experience if you're a professional musician. Like I mean, there's times where I've flown out to China to do 1 5-minute song and then fly back, like when you're actually in the moment doing what you're theoretically paid to do, it's just the smallest fraction imaginable, so most of the time you're doing everything else. You're getting on planes, you're going to a hotel, bitching about the rooms not being ready, like whatever, like spending your time doing that. And then you actually get into and then it's like, oh, how long's the set? Oh, it's just 45 minutes, or something like that, where it's like, that's crazy. We connected flights getting here. We did all this kind of, so, I mean, what else is that moment if not sacred? Like that, to me, that's the moment that you honor. You do everything just to be able to do that. So it's like when you're in that moment, I like being around people who like to give everything to that moment, because it's really special. Yeah,
absolutely. Before we go, I would love to hear just a little bit about, I know you also do some teaching. You teach privately. You also do some master classes. What is your studio? I know you do a lot of online stuff. Who are your typical students, and what do you like to work on with the musicians that study with you? Yeah,
so I have I do now I put times up on my website now, but no one really thinks to go to my website to look at that. But it's but I do have a private list that I send the dates out to first, which if anyone's listening to this and interested, lessons@tayloreigsty.com. And it's a BCC list, so I just, people over time, it's pretty much like a rotating, now about like 200 students that rotate, and some people that I've been teaching for 5-10 years, some people, I always love the chance to, meet some new people and some new students and all that. But what I, every couple of months, I just pick like a handful of 3 or 4 days where I just say, here's 3 slots on this day, 3 slots on that day. And then I write to that lessons list, and it's first come, first serve. So sometimes people snatch all of those, if I got like 16 time slots, they might snatch it up in half an hour. That's happened before. And but so I just try to honor the order that like people go in and stuff. And for me, that's like, it works for me, because then I can just, I can go down to this studio and do like 3-4 lessons or something like that. And Zoom makes it easy. This setup here, it's easy. So it took a long time to put in overhead cams, all this kind of stuff, but I like it much better than lessons in person now. I used to before COVID, I was totally opposed to doing any kind of online lessons at all. Never did it. Always got requests to do that. Never did it, because I'm a sustain pedal nut, and I love to like stare at like posture and all sorts of different things and aspects, and and things that, like, when someone's there in person, if they're nervous, then they're gonna have their left foot on the soft pedal the whole time, and so that's a giveaway that they're nervous, for instance, or just all sorts of like things that I think being there in person is really cool. For me, it works just as well now to do things over Zoom, and but I only like doing it maybe a couple days out of the month when I can fit it in. Sometimes I'll go 6 months, 8 months without doing any lessons and stuff. So but for anyone who wants to be on that lessons list, it's just lessons at tayloreigsti.com, and I send out the dates and go from there. And that part of it works for me and stuff. I like teaching, but it's not my main thing, and I don't want to be considered anyone's like full-time teacher. Like I think it's like something where it's like save it for a special occasion or something. But and I don't know if I could really teach at a university at any point. I don't know if I think I'd get too restless, but in terms of where my heart is in jumping on a flight and going and doing a set in front of people and stuff. That's really where my heart is and stuff. And the teaching thing, it's cool. For me personally, I couldn't do it full time, but I am in a slow process of also writing a book too. So I want to,
Nice.
I want to be able to. I've been threatening to finish writing that for over a decade, but it is something that eventually I'm going to do. And I see all my friends releasing books like Ben Wendel and all of that. And so mine's going to be funnier than theirs. I'm going to do more of I have a lot of real alternative methods in terms of the way that I learned to play the music. And I like being able to share kind of authentically the way that I went about stuff. I've always hated teachers who teach things like a way that they didn't learn themselves. So, I'd be full of BS if I, didn't tell people the way that I did things or show exercises that work in for better or worse, the way that it worked for me and all that. And but then the book, I wanted to have things like just, touring tips and things like that. Like there's not really a lot of resources of that professional musicians really need. Like people are, in college transcribing things and I have mixed feelings on transcription anyways, but no one's telling them like how to make sure that you have your United number, Delta number, and American number when you're traveling so that you can make your life easier and all sorts of stuff and just different aspects about touring really as a lifestyle, which is like the majority of my life now. Like that's what I've been doing. So I want to be able to share that kind of stuff and make it funny and entertaining and maybe a different kind of book than a lot of like, brainy instructional jazz education books. So it'll be a different kind of thing when I can finish it.
Oh, I'm excited about that. And I do agree with you that I think some practical applications to life as a working musician, it's not as readily available as it should be. And, it's not a conversation that happens enough. So I think that it's missing. So I appreciate you doing that.
I mean, and if someone's a young badass that's like, in college for like jazz studies major somewhere or whatever, and they're really great, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this as a career. Like, why don't they have people spend a whole semester on just like taxes and things like that? Like stuff that you actually need to, because then when you get out into the wild, then it's like, man, these are the kind of things that people if you don't send out 1099s on time, like as a band leader, then like there's all sorts of things that I think would be kind of interesting topics to at least approach of like, and telling some stories of my own situations and all that kind of stuff. So one of these days I will finish that, but don't look for it soon.
So last question. What does the rest of 2026 look like with your schedule? What do you have going on?
A lot of cool things, a lot of stuff coming up with Lisa Fisher, who's just one of my favorite all-time musicians and people, and some stuff with Gretchen Parlato in Bulgaria coming up, some touring with Ben Wendel, some US touring with him, some more things and we're going to be back at the Village Vanguard. That'll be really fun. I'm going to be back on the Bodie at Sea cruise, which was just like an incredible week the last time. So much fun. And a lot more touring with my band and some other projects that I'm involved in. There's a great vibraphonist, Christian Tamber, and we have a duo that is like a tribute to Chick Corea and Gary Burton. So some of that's happening. But a lot more with my group and probably more European touring. But in the process, I mean, this has got to be the year where basically I get to the point of hopefully at least getting some stuff tracked on this new album. I'm hoping to release the new album maybe at the end of 2027 is kind of where I'm looking at, but who knows with those kind of time frames. But I want to do one last really big kind of album that's like part of a trilogy with Tree Falls on Plot Armor, and that would have like orchestral layers, different things like that, like be kind of similar aesthetically maybe, or texturally in some ways, but also be different, be its own thing. And then after that, I'm going to do a solo piano record and just make it way easier on myself. Although that's easier said than done, because that kind of, I think I have over 15 hours of solo piano that I've recorded over the years that I hate all of it. So I'm too picky. So that'll be the challenge when I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. But one more kind of bigger album, and then solo, and then want to do or full symphony album and all sorts of stuff. So plenty of time to do it all, hopefully.
Well, I'm excited about all of that. It's amazing.
Thanks, man.
Well, Taylor, thank you for spending some time with me. I've had a wonderful time chatting with you, and just best of luck.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much, Brad. Yeah, talk to you again soon sometime.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe to the Bandwidth Tapes wherever you listen, and consider leaving a rating or review. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.